Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to introduce you to Katerina Gerlach. Kat is a first assistant director who has worked on 17 independent feature films since she graduated from JP Catholic in 2022. Kat, to start off, what's your favorite part about what you do?
I love a lot of parts about ADing. I think the thing I love the most about it is that I am the singular person that gets to know all of the cast and crew on a level that no other cast or crew member gets to know each other. And so I end up being the person that each person goes to solve problems, and come up with solutions. And yeah, I just get to kind of meet everyone and uh, yeah, work with everyone in a capacity that they don't get to work with everyone else.
Mhm. Awesome. And what was your journey like getting into first ADing?
I actually went to JP Catholic to study acting originally.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that. That's so interesting.
yeah, I very quickly found out that it was not for me, and switched over to more producing and directing. And then the way that JP Catholic works, we do so much like hands-on production that you kind of end up working in a lot of different departments, even if they're not ones that you're necessarily interested in. And so at one point, I think it was during my second year at school, someone asked me to AD their film. And at that point, I didn't really know what that meant. So I was like, sure, why not? And I kind of ended up falling in love with it. It fits my natural skill set in a lot of ways. I tend to be very organized and communicative, and I'm very type A. My whole life is basically a giant spreadsheet. And so it just fit really well with already like my natural skill set um, and yeah, so I started doing it a little bit in school. I think it was also my second year that I was asked to do a senior project as an AD, and then just did more and more projects while I was still in school. And then my senior year was the first year that JP Catholic did their feature film program, and I interviewed to be their first AD for it, and showed up to the interview with a full schedule already made for the script because I was just that extra. And so I got the position on Oh Brawling Love, and ended up ADing that my senior year. And so when I graduated, I moved to LA, was working in a couple different TV shows. So I worked on Criminal Minds for a little bit. I worked on For All Mankind, in the AD department, but as a PA. And then really I just spent my first 6 months or so networking, and making connections in LA. And I decided just to put myself out there and start telling people that I was an AD, and I started applying for AD positions on features. Spent a lot of weekends doing short films with people from like AFI and UCLA and stuff, and so I ended up getting a lot of exposure on like bigger budget short films as an AD. It made some really good connections through that, and then I think about 6 months after moving to LA and after graduating, I landed my first feature film as an AD. And everything else just kind of followed from there. I just ended up continuously like networking with the people that I had worked with, and keeping those connections fresh and making more connections. And um, yeah, I just kind of have been doing the feature films ever since. So.
That's so exciting. I mean, it's amazing that you found something that seems to fit like all of your different skill sets really well because you seem to be very much like a people person, but then as you said, super organized. So that's just really exciting to hear. And you've shared a little bit, but can you talk in a little more detail about how you landed your first job after JP Catholic or maybe your first feature?
So my first feature film outside of JP Catholic was called The Day They Arrive. It was a sci-fi kind of a sci-fi film that we shot in Idlewild, California, which is like a small mountain town, a couple of hours outside of LA. And I think I found it honestly through a Facebook group, which is weirdly how I find a lot of my jobs, or at least I did at the beginning. And yeah, I reached out to the producer by email and just kind of pitched myself and told him at that point, I had done two other features while I was still in school, one as an AD and then one as an assistant production coordinator. And so I told them the stuff that I had done up until then and just kind of pitched myself and as I sold him somehow on hiring me. And yeah.
Awesome. And so now that you have been in the industry for a couple of years, you've been on over 17 independent feature films. What advice would you give someone who is looking to pursue a similar path?
I think it's really important that people know how much work it is to make it anywhere in this industry. Um,
Absolutely.
it's constant networking, especially in the beginning. It's constant hustling. There's gonna be times, especially at the beginning, where you're living paycheck to paycheck. I've actually lived out of my car for the past 2.5 years. And that was partially because when I was living in LA, I was living paycheck to paycheck for so long that I wasn't able to do anything outside of work that I liked to do. I wasn't able to spend money to travel and do other things. And so I decided that because I was traveling for production so much anyway, um, I decided to move into my car. Um, and just kind of camp in between productions and stay with other friends and family and stuff. And 2.5 years later, I've still been going production to production and have ended up being able to save all of that money to do fun trips to Europe. And I did the Camino a couple years ago, and I'm going to New Zealand next year. And so, um, yeah, so that's definitely one thing to know is like you will be living paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes you might not get to eat out a lot. You might not get to go, do all the fun things with your friends, especially in the beginning. It takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of sacrifice. And I think the other big thing is just knowing to trust God and that if this is something that He wants you to be doing, it's going to happen. It might not be the easiest, it might not be, the fastest, but if you push through and you keep working as hard as you can and you trust God and trust the people that He puts in your life and the connections that He gives you, that it'll go somewhere.
Amazing. And then, what is a project in your career so far that you're especially proud of?
I would say one of the projects that I'm most proud of is Triumph of the Heart, the feature film about St. Maximilian Kolbe.
It's a
Uh,
beautiful film.
I was very blessed to be able to go to Poland and work with that cast and crew. They were all it was an incredible experience. Just very, very talented people, and such an incredible story to be a part of.
Awesome. And looking back on your experience at JP Catholic, what aspect was most useful to prepare you for what you're doing now?
I think there's a couple of things that stand out that JP Catholic helped me with. One of them being that a lot of the professors, at least when I was in school, there were a lot of the professors were working actively in the industry, and so they were really good connections to have both while in school, but even afterwards. Um, the first feature that I did was actually Professor Scoggins' feature, and it was while I was still in school. And so having that relationship with your teacher, who is also ends up being your boss on a feature film, and making the connections that you can make on a feature film like that, and getting that experience while still in school was just indispensable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've gotten a lot of job recommendations from him and a lot of connections, specifically from Scoggins, throughout the years. Even having graduated 4 years ago, I still stay in touch with him, um, and I still work. I just worked earlier this year with someone that I met on his film. So I definitely made a lot of use of those connections, as well as some of the other professors. I think the other thing that JP Catholic does really well is just how hands-on it is with how many sets that us students got to be on while we were in school. Um, A lot of other film schools, you're only ever on, maybe you direct three of your own projects and then you help out with a few of your friends like once each year. But by the time I had graduated JP Catholic, I had done, I think, 85 short films. And just having that amount of experience on set and that much familiarity with the terminology and just like
Mhm.
how things run, is just so, so useful to be able to transition smoothly into the real world.
Absolutely. I think that's something that a lot of people find having graduated, like, does really set them apart and just how confident you feel and how much you've already done the thing that you want to do.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Great. So we're going to wrap up with a quick little rapid fire section. So, Kat, what was the last movie you watched?
Oh gosh. The last movie I watched was The Odyssey, actually, in theaters.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I loved it. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Who's your favorite professor from JP Catholic?
Oof. I think my favorite professor, I feel bad picking one. I'd say it's probably a tie between Professor Scoggins and Professor Simon.
Hmm. And what's the best restaurant or coffee place on Grand Avenue?
I was a big fan of Kettle when I was there, if that's still around. That was
Yep,
a
very much so.
go-to
Hmm.
both shooting location and a go-to work location. So
For sure. And last question, beach or mountains?
mountains, 100%.
Me too. I totally agree. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for what you've been able to share about your experience. Good luck on the next film. If people want to follow you or get in touch with you, is there a place that they can do that?
You can find my contact information on my IMDb page. Otherwise, my Instagram handle is catgerlach02. So feel free to follow me there or contact me at my email or phone number.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.